You are comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the Unholy Trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government.
I am back. You are comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man from Alameda, California. And I'm at the 420 studio down by the lagoon, as per usual, here in Alameda. And I am joined today by a former Kittatinny Camp fellow alum, Dan Gold, a staff editor with the New York Times. Big time, Dan Gold. How are you?
I'm not sure about the big time, but I'm doing great. Thanks very much, Ralph.
Well, you're not the first person I talked to from the New York Times. Leonard Coppett, the late Leonard Coppett, was a guest on one of my shows way back.
Now that's the big time.
That is the big time. Leonard gave me an hour. I did a sports talk show for Cal State Hayward in the 90s, and Leonard was nice enough. I had a series of former sports writers and players and managers from the golden age of baseball came in. Leonard came in, Charlie Silvera, Hank Sauer, just a bunch of folks. Leonard gave me an hour on camera, and I've used some of his interviews. The interview that I did with him on Comfortably Zoned, he was terrific. And you and I share a past, although our paths never really actually crossed. As kids, we went to the best summer camp that there ever was. Exactly. It was called Kittatinny Camp up in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And we... Kittatinny, yay camp. Wow, the green and white. The funny part is we were both, over the years of our stay at Kittatinny, we were in the same bunks. You're much younger than I am. I won't date myself, but I will say that you're 12 or 15 years younger than I am. I'm 67. And we started out on what they call Pioneer Row at Kittatinny, and we both slept in bunk 20 our first years when we were like 6 years old. And it was just a tremendous experience. We both shared the friendship of Bernie Kersner, who was there at the end of my time and during your time at Kittatinny as a director. He was an esteemed basketball coach at Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn, New York, where you're from. Your brother Matthew went to Erasmus. I don't think you did. Did you? Where did you go to high school?
I did not. Which saddened me. Unfortunately, at the time that I was looking at junior high and high, my parents had it with. There were 2 straight years of long teacher strikes that just shut down the school systems. And I wound up going, much to my chagrin, to a private school called Poly out in Bay Ridge. But all my homies, they were going to Erasmus or possibly Midwood, and so I never caught up with them on that score. But Erasmus.
Well, again, our past is similar. I spent 1 year at a private school, Garden Country Day School. in Queens when my friends were going to Joseph Pulitzer Junior High School, and I spent 7th grade there, and that didn't work out, so I ended up going back to the public school system, which in those days, in the 50s, I'll tell you got a pretty damn good education in the public school system.
I don't doubt it. I would have much preferred it, and in fact, I have never gone back to my high school just because I don't have the associations that would have kept me coming back. City.
Okay.
Under the bridge.
Well, I want to know two things. I want to know what you like most about the summer camp experience and what you like least about the summer camp experience.
All right. Well, there were 3 or 4 things I liked the most. One was actually having the same crew of bunkmates, not only in my bunk, but in those surrounding me, as I grew up, so that every year it was like building on this community. And of course, back then we had no connectivity to the degree that the Facebook and other social media give our kids now. So it was a big thing to look forward to. There were 5 other kids and I who grew up together really through Kittatinny, and we still get together every now and then, every couple of years, just to check in, see how we're doing. So
very cool.
That. Yeah, it is very cool.
Yeah.
I liked the co-edness. That was a big deal because
right. Growing up, the socials and what have you.
Absolutely, the pride of Jewish hormones kicking in like that. That was very cool.
Did you ever sit under the apple tree?
Oh, my first kiss was with my girlfriend from Kittatinny. Absolutely.
Very nice. So was mine, Lenore Weiss. Wherever you are, Lenore, I remember it well. Your glasses almost broke my nose, but I do remember Lenore, and I remember my first kiss was at Kittatinny as well. So that's pretty cool. You know, camp in those days for us, it was an 8-week experience, and the best part was probably for our parents getting rid of the kids during the summer and having summers for themselves. But so you were there a long time, and you either liked it or didn't like it. And there were some years that I didn't particularly dig it, but a lot of years, and most of them I did. And I'm wondering, because Kittatinny was a camp where kids kept coming back and back and back, and my bunkmates became counselors. I don't know if you know people like the Rates, Toby Rate, and if they were there, or Iris Rate, or Hoagie Bach. I don't know if he was there when.
Yeah, I think that name strikes a bell. That wasn't. That's not an unfamiliar name to me, Hoagie. So
Hoagie was my bunkmate in bunk 20 at Kittatinny, and on Pioneer Row we were kids. We were just year after year we'd keep coming back, and it was terrific.
Yeah.
So we have a connect, Dan. I'm glad we get to talk to each other, and I want to segue a little, if I possibly can. We're both sports fanatics.
Right.
You working for the Times, what really led to this interview was that there's a documentary coming out on Dock Ellis, who was a pitcher in the 70s, and mostly with the Pirates, a little bit with the New York Mets. Mm-hmm. And he was reputed to have pitched a no-hitter when he was on LSD. And later years wrote a book. A book was written about him. By I think his name was Dan Hall, if I'm not mistaken. His last name was Hall. Wrote the book on Doc's life.
Donald Hall, who
later became,
U.S. Poet Laureate. He is actually featured as one of the interviews in this documentary, and it's fascinating. It gives a glimpse of just how just how rich a life Dock Ellis had. That he could count among his friends some people you wouldn't associate with ball players, particularly in the 70s. So.
Right, but he was counseled by Jackie Robinson and asked not to lay it on too thick by Jackie Robinson. In other words, he was a rebel for players' rights and the rights of Afro-Americans. Yeah. And he, after retiring, did some drug rehab. Mm-hmm. And later was a drug counselor himself and helped an awful lot of kids reach the straight and narrow. And we're not just talking pot, we're talking hard drugs.
And also alcohol. There's a very, I would say about a quarter of this film, which is called No, a documentary, talks about his work after baseball. And one of the people he worked with closely and whose son speaks quite movingly was the owner of the Texas Rangers at the time, had a major problem with alcohol. And Doc worked with him, and then there are interviews with other people who he worked with who grew up much better for having met Doc and having been able to use his help to get off whatever substances they were abusing. So it's quite affecting. This movie is about more than just his baseball career, but even that part of it, the baseball career, is just very fascinating.
And you covered the documentary for the Times.
Yes, I wrote a review, and interestingly, I have covered a lot of documentaries. This summer, there was actually another baseball documentary I covered on what it was called the Battered Bastards of Baseball, and it was about the Portland Mavericks, this independent baseball minor league team from the mid-'70s. It's been a good season for sports documentaries generally, but those two, which actually first premiered in Sundance earlier this year, are about the best I've seen in quite some time. This one probably is the best, the Dock Ellis thing, because it not only looks at Doc, it puts him in the context of his time and the Pirates in their time. And of course, that was a pretty exceptional team they had assembled. They had...
Absolutely. And, the Pirates were the first team to have 9 players on the field at the same time that were African Americans.
Yes, and they mentioned that. Doc was the starting pitcher for that game.
Right.
And they go into that, and again, just that team had some kind of they just had some mojo that very few other
Absolutely.
Teams matched.
And the leader of that team was Willie Stargell, Pops,
absolutely. This film, and Roberto Clemente at the start of Doc's time there. Clemente, it turns out, had been Doc's first roommate, and they got very close. And in fact, there's an interview with Clemente's widow, not all that long, but she confirms how much Ellis took from his relationship with Clemente. And
Pops was an Encinal High School graduate. I don't know if he graduated, but he went to Encinal High School here in Alameda. And there's a street in Alameda named after Stargell, Willie Stargell Boulevard, as they proudly announce on the bus when you go by it, the recording announcement. Next stop, Willie Stargell. His name was Wilbur, and he himself was quite an individual. He was just a dynamic man.
They also call it Stargell Drive, but beyond that, you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing I came away from this film is realizing, you know, there could be multiple documentaries made from that team, just on so many different individuals, but on so many different levels. I mean,
right. And speaking of drugs, it was a drug culture time. People like Parker were involved in drugs, if I remember correctly, from Pittsburgh.
Right. Those mid '80s drugs as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned that the owner of Texas was involved in drug and needed drug counseling, but the future owner at that time of Texas and the past owner, a man named George Bush, was owned the Texas Rangers, and he needed a little drug counseling in his time. So,
well, baseball is nothing without its traditions, right? So.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Right. What was your first baseball game that you remember going to?
It was a Mets game. It was at the very, well, let's see. It was a Mets game, I would say probably 66, and then my dad also took me to a Yankees game right about that same time against the Kansas City A's back then. And because, funny you should ask, he was the vice president of some medical association and in charge of picking the insurance agency that would cover the members of that association, and the person who was trying to sell him an insurance policy was Charlie
Finley, right?
That's it. And I remember asking my dad, was it okay if I rooted for the Yankees? This is, by the way, the last time I ever rooted for the Yankees. And actually, Finley got a little bent out of shape at that time. But it was absolutely true, because then later, in later years after Finley moved the A's to Oakland, my folks were guests at his in his box seat, and he treated them very well. And so,
well, Charlie Finley is another subject. You talk about a subject for books. Books have been written about him. The best one was a guy named Nicholson, wrote a book about Charlie. One of the most fascinating guys in the world, made his money, indeed selling insurance to doctors, and was inspired by it when he himself had tuberculosis and was confined, and just put together the idea in his head that it was something that doctors needed. It was disability insurance to ensure that doctors, were they in accidents or sick, their income could continue. And Charlie was a hell of a character.
Yeah, that much is so. And he was ahead of his time, obviously. I mean, he pretty much saw the template of where baseball was going and just wanted to get there first,
And he was loved and hated. There was no in between. Players hated him. They bound together and hated him. The dynasty he built was built around their players' mutual hatred for not only each other, but Charlie Finley. And then he, like a lot of geniuses do, he blew it all up, and he couldn't, he refused to give in to free agency and the changing times, and he let Catfish Hunter go, almost by accident with Hunter, but some of the others just it was a pity because they won 3 years in a row. They were the last great dynasty, and he just let it go.
And he had his problems with Bowie Kuhn. I remember stepping in and voiding some of these trades in the best interests of baseball. But like,
I still remember watching on television as Rollie Fingers and Joe Rudy in Boston Red Sox uniforms before the game.
Mm-hmm.
They were about to be Red Sox, and Finley voided that. And I remember Finley calling Kuhn the village idiot. I think that's how he referred to him. And Kuhn was very ineffective. Kuhn was the person who banned Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle from baseball for working for Atlantic City casinos.
That's right, as greeters. I mean,
right. They would.
Right. It was virtually nothing. They needed the bucks. You know, they were doing this sheerly for the money, and somehow Kuhn steps in and says, "This is our business." How ridiculous!
Right. How ridiculous. And baseball has been led by some very, very poor examples of leadership. The current Bud Selig, a fellow Yid, did some things in his time that I find appalling, making the All-Star game a determinant of an exhibition game itself, determine who gets home field advantage for the World Series the next year.
I hate that.
I hate that too. It's idiotic. They should rotate it year to year as they always have, and because that's a big thing. Whoever wins the first game is the odds change dramatically, and
there's another one that's I'm sorry. There's another. I've only heard this as nothing hard, but as a rumor that Selig is behind something that the new commissioner is supposedly going to promote, which is bring the designated hitter to the National League, which would, to me, be...
Well, you know, you're breaking up just a little bit, Don. Would you repeat what you said?
Yeah, I have heard that the next commissioner is going to build on something that Selig wanted, and that would be to bring the designated hitter to the National League, which to me would be grievous, just terrible. So.
Well, I think the rule itself is grievous. I understand it. I understand it from money aspect. Guys making big bucks, big name players at the end of their career, this, that, and the other thing. But it changes the strategy. One thing I like about the National League is you have the strategy of pinch hitting, of a pitcher getting to face a pitcher, and should he stay in, should he not, the double switch. It would not be good. And
no. And again, the commissioner's mandate is for the best interests of the game. I get that the players would love this because it would extend, maybe 10 guys' career a year, right? But
right.
But it's not just for the players. It's I would go back.
No, the union. The union
get rid of it. Mm-hmm.
No, the unions are absolutely behind it, and the unions doing something in the best interest of the game is almost laughable. Not only don't they do things in the best interest of the game, they don't do things in the best interest of the lives of their players. Witness the steroid era that we've gone through, and how unions would tip off players when they're going to be tested, and the incredible damage that steroids will do to an individual's body has been downplayed over the years, and how steroids totally ruined the record book as we know it, with witness bonds and being able to compare your, was Ted Williams a better hitter? Was the best left fielder of all time? You can't do that anymore. And baseball conspired with the unions, knowing full well what was going on, to cover it up for all these many years. And it's a crime. It gets my blood pressure up there, and it's just the state of today's times that we live in. No pun intended with the New York version.
No worries. But that brings very neatly back to drug use in baseball and Doc's position there. This film makes very clear that he, at least his story is that he pitched every game on some form of drug, and it was because he had performance anxiety, that he had fear of failure. So originally he would take all these greenies, these stimulants, right?
Right, meth, basically. Meth in the pill.
Right, and then and he continued to take them throughout his career, but then he would mix in other things. You want a little more skepticism maybe from the film, except why would he lie? There is no reason for him to say the things he does, and he seems to be very candid, and there is backup from the friends and family, if not the teammates, that are also interviewed. So, it's fascinating because there's this Robin Williams bit about Doc pitching this game on LSD, and it's the opposite of a performance-enhancing drug, right?
Right.
But the way Doc himself is interviewed and describes how he can barely make out, he cannot make out who he's pitching against. He just knows that the batter is on the left or the right side. He has catcher wearing tape, glowing tape on his fingers so he can make out what the catcher is calling. The details that he describes are just fascinating. And
hey, listen, a lot of it had to be muscle memory. From the standpoint of I haven't done LSD but a few times in my life, and just walking became muscle memory.
Right? Yeah. You gotta see the Robin Williams bit because it is screamingly funny. But yeah, I imagine that's pretty much what Dock Ellis was up against.
Right. All the more credit to the man who eventually died of his
cirrhosis,
liver problems, which were probably brought on by an alcohol abuse, and alcohol is a drug. Let's face that.
That's right. And he was quite frank about all the different ways he'd abused his body. And, to that degree, it reminded me of when Mickey Mantle talked about his own alcohol abuse because he figured he wouldn't live all that long because his own dad died. No, the film was a real glimpse at a time when baseball was really starting to reflect larger societal issues in a way that hadn't been seen before. And of course these days it's almost as though those were almost naive times, the issues that they faced. But it's still fascinating stuff because you realized everything came in a rush then. You know, everything that had to be worked on came all at once, and it made for a very it was a wonderful time to follow the sport in a way that maybe just because I'm older, as much as I still love my team and I wanted to do well, I'm not as gripped by daily events the way I was, you know, watching the team in the 70s, something like that. So.
Right. I call those years of being a Mets fan in the 70s the Bruce Beauclair years.
I call them the Lost in the Desert years. Those were brutal years. But that was what I in fact, at the very end of his baseball career, you mentioned this. Yeah, I had forgotten totally that Dock Ellis first played. He was traded from the Pirates with Willie Randolph to the Yankees and for Doc Medich. And Dock Ellis won the American League Comeback Player of the Year as he helped pitch the Yankees to the '76 World Series. And
I'm sure you remember Doc Medich and Fritz Peterson.
Of course.
Exchanging families.
More than just high fives, yeah. They
literally exchanged families. And
now it's a reality show, you know.
Right, exactly. Now, hey, who doesn't, for crying out loud? But back then they were planting seeds for the future of our great Americana.
Right. And then he kicked around a little more, and Ellis did play for the Rangers and the A's at one point, I think. But you reminded me that he did close out his career with the Mets in those dreadful wasteland years. Although he was traded to the Pirates for 3.
Bob Myrick, I think, if I remember correctly.
You may well be.
Yeah.
I just thought, that was nice. They let him retire as a Pirate because that's where he really.
Now I'm going to give you one more little connect. After his playing career, he spent a year or two in the senior league down in Florida. And I think it was with Clearwater, but I can't remember which team. He had some success down there, and there was a terrific book written about that league by a fellow named Peter Golenbach, who I'm acquainted with, and I'm scheduled to do an interview about that book. He also wrote Dynasty and about the New York Yankees.
He's a terrific writer. He's
a terrific writer, indeed. And he's going to do an interview later in the month with me on that senior league that Doc played in the very early 80s, soon after he retired.
I've forgotten that one. That I'll be interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, I hope you will tune in. And, hey, listen, I hope you'll be back many times over the course of time. And I really enjoyed chatting with you, Dan. You're terrific. And
Ralph, it's fun for me too. If I wind up getting so lucky as to see something as good as this film, I'll be happy to talk to you about it and get the word out, because documentaries in particular, they come and they go, and they don't get they don't get the audiences they really ought to. This one is very surprising because it's a first documentary by the director, and I really think he caught lightning in a bottle on this. I thought this was
terrific. Hey, one other question. How'd you get to the Times, just out of curiosity?
Out of curiosity. Persistence. I mean, I grew up my folks and I would come into the city, and see a play on Broadway, and we would always end the night by swinging around on 43rd Street and having me run in and buying the early edition of the paper, right? So I knew what I wanted to do and where I wanted to do it from a pretty early age. And yet they for about, I can honestly say for about 15 years I had a really fat and thick file of rejections from the paper. But I finally got in when they were beefing up their business reporting and editing staff, and I had done both. And so I came on, and it's funny you asked that. Today, September 8th, is my 22nd anniversary here. So.
Oh, wow.
It's an appalling number of
Did you
years.
do any writing for the Kittatinny Camp Clarion?
I probably did, but it is lost to the ages, and particularly I don't remember. I don't remember that at all. You have an amazing memory. The Clarion, wow. That's pretty good. So.
Hey, listen, I remember Louis Nailbuff delivering it. I don't know if he was still up there when you. Do you remember Louis Nailbuff?
That eludes me, but that doesn't mean he wasn't there. It's just that.
Okay. Well, I live in the past because where else can I be happy?
Cheaper there. Yeah, no.
The rent's cheaper. Where else can I be happy, for Christ's sake?
All right, man. I
Thanks a
enjoyed
lot.
it very much. Thanks again.
I'm glad you did, and those words make me happy and made my day. I'll send you a link as soon as I put it up, and I hope you'll spread the word.
I sure will. Thanks again, Ralph.
Thanks, my friend. You have a wonderful day. Hey, before you go.
Yeah.
You still with me? I got to end the segment the way I end every segment. I implore my guests and my listening audience to keep your humor dry and your dreams wet. Keep your kids off the laps of clerics wearing dresses. Always a good idea. And keep your kids out of recruiting offices, military recruiting offices. Your child will come back a different person if you're lucky enough to have your child come back. And I'm not laughing about that. I mean that. All four things, and the fifth one is keep on keeping on. So you do that.
Well, thanks. I can get behind each and every one of those things. So.
Take care, my friend.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.